We are super proud to announce that Stay Plugged In is now sponsored by HyperX for our online events for the month of August. Prizes will include a Cloud Stinger wireless headset and a Cloud Stinger wired headset for our Turbo Tuesday tournaments for the first and second winning teams. And then for our Valorant tournaments, which are every other week on Thursdays and Fridays, that will be the Alloy Origins Core Mechanical Gaming Keyboard, HX Red, and the Pulsefire FPS Pro Gaming Mouse, which the keyboard is for first place and the mouse is for second place. Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Spincast. Today we are joined by LEONE. He is the head esports coach at Oakland University, a developing program over there yet again on the West Coast, the hotspot of collegiate esports, so to say, in America, to say the least. So without further ado, Carl, go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us what started your passion in esports and how that took you to being the head esports coach at the developing program at Oakland.
So my passion for esports started before I knew esports existed. It was mostly just in gaming, like most of us, right? Mario, I was a big fan of, and a lot of those classic games, Zelda. But, growing up in the era of when multiplayer started to become a real thing, around Call of Duty and Halo 2 came out, these great, amazing games when it first started to become online competitions. That's where I grew up. And so I really enjoyed that. I had a huge passion for it. And, it's almost like I fell into it, but I was very passionate along the entire process. So I started playing League of Legends about 8 years ago, just played the game endlessly. I got to a fairly high ranking and got recruited by Robert Morris University, who started their program in 2014 with the first scholarships in the U.S. for gaming. So I was one of that first class of students who got that, competed for them through League of Legends for all 4 years. After I graduated, I went and coached the League of Legends team at Aquinas College, which is in Grand Rapids, Michigan, on the other side. But now I have a year of that under my belt, and I've now been hired in as the head coach of esports for Oakland University, which is in Michigan. So it is actually on the east side. Oh. So yeah, it is Oakland, California, but no, we're over here in Michigan.
No problem. That's a common theme, actually. I've done that 3 or 4 times. It's like, wait.
No worries, that's fine.
all good. So on the eastern Oakland, not the western Oakland. Either way, even up there, I think another hot spot's that Midwest New England area, I think, United States too. Yeah, great backstory there. I know Robert Morris is like one of the pioneering colleges of esports, right? They really developed a whole bunch of stuff. If they weren't the first to it, they were right there with the few others that were already established. So talk me through the development process at Oakland right now, right? You're currently developing the program. It's going to, debut, and you're going to start competing this fall semester. So tell me everything that you've been going through in developing and what you have to focus on, different approaches, different perspectives. So by the fall, you're ready to go and ready to compete.
Right. So when I was hired in, they had already announced the 3 titles that we would be competing in this fall: Rocket League, League of Legends, and Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. And I would have proposed those same titles as well, maybe Overwatch too. But I would have proposed those same titles because they're very powerful, popular esports titles for collegiate esports. And then also Rocket League is very easy for those who aren't familiar for esports to follow. Smash has a bit of roots. Like, everybody who isn't into esports kind of remembers Smash Brothers, Melee, and all of that. So I think that those are great titles, and then obviously League of Legends, the most popular esport in the world and a huge force in collegiate esports, is a given. So I think that was the right decision by them. And when I came in, which was towards the end of March, I've been working on a lot of different aspects to get it ready for the fall, and it's starting to really shape up now. The big aspects that I would highlight is, determining which conferences we're going to compete in, what other schools we want to associate with, what kind of sponsors we're going to deal with, who's going to give us our equipment or who's going to help us with that. And then on top of that, we just last week held our tryouts for Rocket League and League of Legends, and we made the decision to actually stream both of the events. So we had 20 hours of content between the two of tryout games with all of the participants, and it was a very successful event as far as viewership is concerned, and the students that brought in, for the actual competition was very high level. I mean, in the top 1% ranked nationally. So, I mean, many other collegiate esports teams aspire to have those kind of players, and we're lucky to have some on campus and some recruited into the trials. So I'm incredibly excited about that. I've been spending the whole week just going over the videos of the tryouts just to try and determine which students we're going to bring on board this fall.
Yeah, 100%. I know that tryout process is definitely very tedious, right? In a good way, but you really have to make sure that you're recruiting that entirety of the player, right? Skills, in-game communications, the whole 9 yards for sure. So that's definitely exciting because once you have the players in, I think everything starts to ramp up. It gets even more exciting because now you have players to coach. Kind of going back a little bit, you said you've been a coach at a different college for a year already in League of Legends. So take us through what being a collegiate esports coach kind of looks like, your day-to-day, what you focus on to help the students continue to grow both as a student and as a player.
So I think it depends per coach. You have your own philosophy of how you want to coach the game. For me, I've always talked about balance as being a really important aspect that I bring to the students. And I focus on it specifically because at my time at Robert Morris, I saw some students get too focused on just playing the game as many hours as possible. And it's a bit of a stigma out there that you've got the person who's just grinding away 70 hours a week of League of Legends, and for some reason it's ingrained in our culture a little bit that will make you better at the game. And I found out very quickly at Robert Morris that that's not the case, that having less hours and have it be structured practice with a goal centered around it and then review after is much more productive than just grinding away 12 hours a day. So that's how I set up our practices with our teams. That's how I did it at Aquinas College, and that's definitely my philosophy that I'll bring to Oakland University. And I think it's lends itself better to the collegiate scene than maybe it does the professional scene. I think I would take the same approach at the professional scene, but maybe back off a little bit and let them play a little bit more. But I'm talking about 3 or 4 hour practices 3 times a week for the collegiate scene, because at the end of the day, these students are there to get an education and to be successful after they graduate. And so if they go professional, if they become amazing players, that's a great thing if that's their goal, and I'm happy to support that. But if that doesn't happen, I want to make sure that they're prepared for the outside world after, because I've seen players get lost in collegiate esports just trying to grind away at the game, and it's not productive towards their studies, and it's not productive towards getting better at the game either. So it just doesn't make any sense to do it.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I always say that, esports to me really is only maybe 20%, 25% actually playing, right? The entire industry, there's so much more, right? You got your production, you got your casting, you got your business side of it with the marketing, the financial, the building the teams, the managerial work. Yeah. So much more that you can be exposed to and go into. So setting those players up like you are with that balance to realize that, like, hey, going pro is fantastic, right? It's all of our dreams, but what's the chance, right? There's 50 pro players per game. That's a lot less than traditional sports, and we know the chance of going pro in the NFL, NBA are very small. So having that realistic approach and that approach and outlook, I think, goes a long way for the long-lasting success of those kids. So kind of fast forwarding a few gears, looking towards the fall, what does your program look like? Are you guys going to be like a student-led club, or obviously not completely student-led, varsity athletics? Like, how is your program denominated by the university, and what support do you have?
So we are a full-fledged varsity athletic program under the athletic department. We're actually the first Division I varsity program in Michigan. So we've made that, we're kind of a frontier in that way. Definitely we have the full support of the entire administration. We actually had our president at the event announce it. So it's definitely all the way to the top, back down. It's fully supported. And I've had, since I've come into my position, I've had just everybody reach out to me asking how they can help and how we can make this as amazing as it possibly can this fall. And I'm just so excited for it. So I've been at at programs, where it's a club, and I've visited other program or talked with other leaders of club programs, and it's just a different atmosphere and a different experience for the students at the university when it's completely embraced by the entire university.
Yeah, that's the trend where I really hope to see a lot of colleges follow your suit, is having it like be mainstream, right? An athletic program where you can have game days, right? Have the fans out there too, and be accepted by the university president and the teachers and the professors, right? That having that community is fantastic. So with your experience both coaching and as a player at Robert Morris and Aquinas and everywhere else, speak to the importance of that support staff, right? Like, how does it really help the students not only maintain that balance, but also bolster their performance and really give them that support to be successful at everything they're partaking in?
Well, it just makes it so easy for the students to focus on just whatever it is that would make them best at the game, whatever they need to do to practice. And just like you would a traditional sport, a football player doesn't need to worry about scheduling or anything like that, or any of the costs involved for the program, or you just focus on practicing and just performing your best on game day. Where in some club programs, you're on the advising team, you're the president of the club, whatever position you hold, you have a lot of other responsibilities on top of just competing in the club program. So I think what happens when you bring it up to that next level, that varsity level under athletics, is you give a lot more support to the students. I mean, we're going to bring diet and exercise programs. I've talked with our sports psychologists to meet with the players on a weekly basis as a group to help them. On top of that, we're going to have a lot of other academic support for the players. So it's just bringing it up to the next level so that the players can just focus on the game and their studies, and that's really it.
Yeah, 100%. I absolutely love to see that holistic approach, right? Because I always say that you have to focus as much effort inside the game as you do outside the game, right? Proper diet, nutrition, physical exercise, mental health, right? Massive, right? You're under so much stress. You need to know how to handle it all. So absolutely awesome to see that there. Really hope to see it come to complete fruition here in the fall. Speaking about the fall, with all of your past experience, I keep harping on it, but you do have a ton. What competitions are you looking forward to? CRL, CSL, NACE, TESPA. What do you really see your team partaking in to fight for those, national champions and all those different organizations?
Well, we'll certainly, like I said, we play in League of Legends, Rocket League, and Smash Ultimate, so we'll certainly participate in the big national ones run by the developers, right? So CRL, or for, is it ULO or CLO right now? They've changed it so many times for League of Legends, I can't keep up.
But I'm pretty sure, but who knows?
I swear, as a player, it was CLO, and then it was ULO, and then it's back to CLO now. So you know what? It's just whatever Riot Games wants to call it. We'll be competing in that. And then we'll also likely compete in a regional conference, so somewhat Midwest conference, and then also we're looking to build out a program for a national conference that we'll be competing in as well. So that'll be interesting. My goal as a coach is to have a schedule set up so that they can have a weekly competition throughout the entire season, all the way from September to May. Yeah,
that's awesome. Absolutely love to see that. Speaking about all these competitions and organizations, especially at the collegiate level, there's so many, right? And I know there's controversy surrounding, okay, what's the, when is the NCAA going to get involved, right? Because once they sniff that money, like they're the biggest entity in any athletics, right? So they're going to come into it in some fold or another. So what do you see looking towards the future, say 2 or 3 years down the road? Where do you hope to see collegiate esports start to transition towards, right? Like maybe a central unity, something like the NCAA, or kind of stick into where you have these wealth of options?
I think what will happen is that right now what's going on is that all of these new programs that have been blowing up, right? We've talked about in 2014, the first varsity program was established, Robert Morris University. And over the last 6 years, it's just exploded to I think it's over 150 now universities that have actual scholarship funds behind it. So, and then a ton more club programs behind them as well. So all of these different schools and universities want some other competition besides the one big national event, for the 2-month period from the developer. So you're actually seeing, at least in my area, a lot of different conferences just being brought up. Different universities and colleges banding together to create their own conference that they can compete in. That way they have legitimate schedules that they can follow and count on the other schools being there. because that's what you're running into, at least from what I've heard. A lot of people in CSL or TESPA, when you're running into these big national tournaments with club programs or programs that are run by people that you don't really know, first of all, it's hard to coordinate the schedules, and then second of all, sometimes they just don't show up, which is fine from the from the competitive standpoint. If they just don't show up, that's a bummer for the students. But if you're a program director and you're trying to set up a stream and schedule it out 2 months in advance so that everybody can come watch the stream, you're going to have a big viewing party and you want to have 80 plus viewers and sponsors for the stream, and then all of a sudden the other team doesn't show up. It's like, okay, well we can't
do that. Nothing you can do at that point.
That's it, guys. Have a good night, right? So to avoid that, a lot of people are building out their own conferences, right? There's one here in Michigan, Esports Conference. There's a GLEC, which is Great Lakes Esports Conferences. So many of them. But I think what's going to happen 5 years from now, I think all of these big traditional athletic conferences will embrace esports and have their own wing under it. I think NAIA came out of they have their own conference that they built out now, but I think NCAA will build out their own governing body. I think all of that will come in time once these collegiate programs have a little bit more infrastructure behind them and really a proven track record of it being a legitimate competition. Because we've only got 6 years right now. It's so brand new, but it's so interesting, you know what I mean? Because it feels like we've been around forever, especially for me. I'm a dinosaur in the scene. But, for these big institutions and governing bodies, they need to see a little bit more time go by and see that it's legitimate to really put in the investment. And I know NCAA has tried, they've really dabbled and seen if it was a good idea for them. And I think they ultimately ended up not taking it on board. But at least there's been those conversations, and I think eventually it will go that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Can definitely see all of those coming to fruition. Like, the biggest thing that I hear a ton of is the scheduling issues, right? Like you were saying, is that all these competitions are scheduling the same game night, weekend, championship series, all in the same week or in 2 week time frames. And it's like, well, I need to go 100 miles that way this week and then 100 miles that way. It just starts to become logistically unfeasible, right? So hopefully, with these conferences, you already see, like you said, really ironed out schedule where the teams can expect the other team to be there, have these great streams. And I think that, boosts the visibility and the viewership of collegiate esports to bring it, more towards that mainstream platform that, that you see, football and basketball and baseball and all the traditional big ones. And I think, esports already has those numbers to beat it. It's just about a question about making it mainstream everywhere. So,
yeah, and I think also, having these legitimate athletic conferences embracing esports will probably bring up the production value, and that's really what I'm looking for too, right? Because when you watch NCAA football game compared to the NFL, they're both very high production value. You know what I mean? But when you talk about these small conferences that I've talked about, the production value is very, very low compared to, let's say, the LCS that Riot Games puts on. It's an incredible broadcast. I think we need to get a legitimate collegiate esports conference across multiple titles that can aspire to that level of broadcast, so that way people who maybe aren't familiar with collegiate esports can watch it and still have it be entertaining and just very clear for them.
Yeah, exactly. I really couldn't agree more there. You're completely right in that viewership or the visibility needs to be mitigated between the pro level and the collegiate level. Because like you said, a lot of these productions are usually a student that knows something about streaming with an okay PC, but they can hit go live, but they can't really have that broadcasting talent, right? And I think over time that will begin to change once we have all these resources, have production studios built out in these kind of, in the collegiate arenas, all that kind of good stuff. So that's exciting to see. I will have one last question for you before we do have to wrap up. What is one piece of advice that you would give to students that you're actively recruiting, or high school students that are looking to go play collegiately? What's one piece of advice that you would give them to help them stay on course and improve their game to get to that next level so they can be recruited into a good program and get a scholarship to go get a great education?
I would say take less time grinding out endless hours of whatever your title is, and make sure that you have a specific goal in mind every day when you go to practice, right? So if you're going to dedicate 5 hours of practice to play League of Legends today, I want to work on farming. I want to work on my jungle route. I want to work on this. So have a goal every single day and then check it at the end of the day. That way you can actually see if you're making progress on your goal. If you're just playing endless hours of solo queue, you might not learn anything at the end of 12 hours, and that's just a terrible waste of time. Also, one last one, don't skip out on all of these sandbox modes. So for League of Legends, it's practice tool. For Rocket League, it's all of those simulated little games that they have that you can download. Don't skip on those, because those are where you actually grow your own fundamental mechanics, and that will really appeal if you've put in hours into that to these collegiate esports professionals that are trying to recruit you into their teams, and they've got the big scholarship dollars, so you want to impress them.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. As I think that's the best way to improve, especially in esports, is having those dedicated approaches, because there's so many tiny things, right? You have your individual, mechanics, FPS games, your aim, even in League of Legends, like your clicking ability, make sure you're not missing your abilities or your utility. And then also you have game knowledge, and you said like farming, how to lane correctly, all that kind of stuff. Having a dedicated approach 100% makes sense. So unfortunately, we are out of time. Really great conversation. Excited to see Oakland come to complete fruition and start competing here in the fall. So real quick, tell us where we can find Oakland if any of our viewers are interested in finding out more, potentially going there, or just wanting to keep up with your competitive teams.
Of course, so you can go to oakland.edu/esports, or any of our socials that are all just /Oakland Esports. And follow us there, Twitch, Twitter, and Instagram.
Awesome. Easy enough, right? So once again, had a fantastic time today. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Carl. Looking forward to seeing your success in the future. To all our viewers and listeners, thanks for joining us today. Ultimately, stay healthy and stay happy in the current pandemic. Make sure you're taking care of yourself and your loved ones, and stay plugged in.